welcome back to Party Trick Astrology. I'm Nina.
I'm Shaina.
And this is Lilith in Sagittarius, another installment of our Lilith Through the Signs and Houses series. We go sign house, and if you're stumbling across this and you're like, I wish I knew a little bit more about what Lilith means, we also have a video on that. We're doing the Black Moon Lilith, which can also be referred to as the mean Lilith or the true Lilith. There are two different ways of calculating the same thing.
Yes, we have a down bar full of stuff. We each have separate YouTube channels where we both talk about astrology. If you want to follow that, that'll be down below. I have a TikTok.
Oh.
Nina just dropped some new merch. So if you want to check
the post.
Yes, we each have an Instagram. There's a lot of stuff down below. Check it out or not. Enjoy this video. Let's get into it.
Right, so the interesting thing about Lilith in Sagittarius is Lilith does get so obsessive and focused in on something. Whatever sign that Lilith is in, it shows an obsession and over preoccupation with what that sign represents. And it is so counterintuitive to Sagittarius because I feel like the greatest attribute of Sagittarius is this freedom that it represents, is this sense of perspective, and it's a mutable sign as well. So there's this sense of not being stuck in one place for too long and always looking wider and wider and wider, whereas Lilith just wants to get more and more honed in on the themes of whatever sign that she's in. So the pairing of Lilith in Sagittarius ends up creating like this obsessiveness in this sign that doesn't like to be too attached. It creates this attachment and this concentration, preoccupation in this sign that is a whole lot more worry-free than Lilith is. So I see this Lilith in Sagittarius placement as truly like trying to understand things that are outside of our realm of understanding, or things that should sort of just be treated a bit more lightly. Like Sagittarius is always aware of the fact that there are things that we don't know, and Sagittarius is so open to new perspectives and doesn't have this necessity to be in control. It can go with the winds of the world. And so with Lilith and Sagittarius, the main thing that happens with this placement is trying to get control and get answers for the uncontrollable and the unanswerable, and almost trying to cage and control this concept of freedom. That's sort of like this thesis that I came up with Lilith and Sagittarius.
All right, that's the video. No.
no, there's more to go into, but that's like, you know, the thesis.
No, I think it's a good thesis. A big part of Lilith, as we've mentioned in hopefully every video, is the exile part. Where that Lilith is based is the feeling of exile from that sign, from that energy. And so with Lilith and Sagittarius, I think that it's this feeling of not being free. I feel like Lilith and Sagittarius really seeks personal freedom to extreme lengths, and you might have grown up in an area where you feel like for whatever reason you didn't have a certain amount of freedom. It could have been especially political, religious, even moral freedom. Maybe your parents really had a very strong idea of who they wanted you to grow up to be, but not like Capricorn, not like, oh, you're gonna grow up and do this. More like, you're gonna be this kind of person. You're gonna be a person who holds these kinds of morals and these kinds of beliefs. And you might have felt restricted from that from a very young age. And so Lilith in Sagittarius is another one of those energies like Scorpio, because it's later in the, I was gonna call it the zodiac alphabet, because it's like the number of signs. With it being the 9th sign in Sagittarius, it rules kind of like those college years. So this might not be a Lilith that you feel like you're able to harness and explore until you're in those later college years. Probably a lot having to do, kind of like I said, a little bit of a feeling of, not being able to freely express yourself when you were younger. And this might even create somebody in maybe more extreme situations that, are very against religion at a young age, and they have to go through this real kind of like self-learning thing to have a better relationship with it when they're older. Or it might just be a situation with Lilith where it's just perpetually a very bad relationship with it. I think of Lilith and Sagittarius as like the kind of household you grew up in, is like having political signs everywhere, but like maybe your parents believed in, we're on two different sides or voting for two different people, and a lot of religious motifs throughout the house or something along those lines. Because I see Sagittarius as like the sign of opportunity. I think that wherever you have Sagittarius, if you have a Sagittarius placement, it means that you got a lot of opportunities in that planet. And so with Lilith and Sagittarius, I'm wondering if the opportunities that you got weren't the ones that you wanted. You were like, yeah, I get this, this, and this, but I don't want those opportunities. I want these opportunities. You might just have this little bit of a bitter feeling towards the luck you receive or the opportunities that you receive.
Right, the tie-in between Sagittarius and opportunities is that Sagittarius really at the core of it has to do with perspective. That's why it has to do with travel, beliefs, higher education. And the more perspectives that you have, the more you're able to be in tune with the opportunities available to you. So with that exile experience with Lilith and Sagittarius, you might not have had a wide range of perspectives. You might have been pigeonholed into forcing yourself to believe one perspective, and because of those narrow perspectives, your sense of opportunity was limited. Right, the exile part of Lilith in Sagittarius is just not having a great sense of the scope of the world, and in this way it can make you feel more powerless, and this sense of being restricted is the greatest restriction that Lilith in Sagittarius has. So naturally Lilith wants to rebel against that exile, and the most common thing that you'll hear about Lilith in Sagittarius in the way that it is destructive, in that itch that you have to scratch until you destroy yourself, is overdoing things. This can be overdoing alcohol, overdoing drugs, overdoing any kind of adrenaline, junkie sort of stuff, just being a big overdoer, because there is such a rebellion against the idea of being restricted in any sense.
Also, people might have made you feel wrong for the things that you did think, for your beliefs, for where you stand. Like, another example of how it's different from those Capricornian expectations with Sagittarius is like, oh, we expect you to be a Democrat, but you're a Republican, or like vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, those are the moral expectations that we had for you. And you're now made to feel wrong or shunned because you believe something different. And so this can be a real place of outcast. Also, you might even feel a little exiled from joy and enjoyment, or even I was thinking about maybe you have a weird kind of entitlement to happiness, which sounds odd because I feel like, well, everybody should be entitled to happiness, but in reality we aren't promised anything, and the way that Sagittarius might deal with their emotions is they might get really upset when they're feeling anything except this complete joy and bliss. And so I think that's where what Nina was talking about, of where those kind of adrenaline junkies seeking obsessions and addictions come in. It's just trying to feed that thing that always wants to be up here and is mad because it's not always up here, you know? Also, a big thing with Lilith and Sagittarius, I think, is problems with responsibility. Maybe this might be somebody who, you know, ran away from home. And if you didn't literally run away from home, I'm thinking like, especially because it's Sagittarius, you ran away from home through the lens of college. Like, oh, college is my way that I can leave my city and run away and feel the freedom that I've always wanted. But then I've seen this happen before where it's like the Lilith in Sagittarius gets to college and they're like, I don't want these responsibilities. Now I have all these other responsibilities that I don't want to deal with, that I think I'm almost too good for, because Lilith kind of thinks she's too good for that stuff.
That's a good point, because one thing that you're exiled from is also this inspiration that the sign of Sagittarius has with itself, the sense that I am capable, I will be able to conquer, and really, you know, everything happens for a reason is a big Sagittarius energy. And so when you can't find the reason for why things happen, or can't see the opportunity in the challenges that are presented to you, you can become even more fearful of the unknown. That's the thing, is that Sagittarius is open to the unknown and is open to seeking the truth. Seeking the truth can be extremely difficult for Lilith and Sagittarius, because the idea of seeking the truth means to leave behind your illusions, the belief systems that you're attached to, in order to find something that is true, that transcends your limited perspective. Definitely, it can create a little bit of a sourpuss that becomes really disgruntled by not being in control. That's like what the thesis that I brought up before. You know, if you're not in control, you don't know how you're going to be able to handle something that is unfamiliar, that is something that you haven't been faced with before. And Lilith and Sagittarius, with that line of thinking, can spin out about what ifs and hypothetical situations and worst case scenarios, because it doesn't see life as an opportunity. It can see life more as challenges, because it doesn't have that self-belief.
Something else that I think could be true with a Lilith in Sagittarius, already Sagittarius is that kind of sign that gets into something one day and is into it for a week and then drops it, you know, and then is into the new hobby and then drops it. And I feel like with Lilith and Sagittarius, this is even more extreme, because Lilith gets so obsessed with something, and Sagittarius can get so focused on something as well. But I feel like where an especially big difference is with the Lilith and Sagittarius is that I feel like what will make the Lilith and Sagittarius not want to do something anymore is when it stops becoming fun and it starts becoming work. And it now starts becoming something that someone else tells them to do, to clock in on their schedule, to do it this way, and this is how it's done, and this, and that. And the second it's out of rules, it's like, whoa, 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 this is my fun thing. You're now impinging on my freedom of how I want to express this thing. How dare you? You know, that kind of attitude I think can be very common. Let's go into my outfit. I'm sure you can tell in the camera, I am sweating. Okay, ideally, if I had which I practically do, but if I had like an unlimited closet of anything, I would actually probably be wearing a cowboy hat and like a vacation like Hawaiian shirt, because I feel like those are the two vibes. Like, I think a perfect example of that is Tyler, the Creator, has a Lilith in Sagittarius, and his whole golf wang thing is very like pastel vacation dad vibes, and like that's where I got the idea. Yeah, I also just wanted to wear color. I feel like Lilith and Sagittarius can also be very glittery. Like, I feel like if it's like a famous female that has a Lilith and Sagittarius, they'll wear like a very sparkly, gaudy, tacky kind of outfit. Just in general, I think Lilith and Sagittarius might always maybe wear one extra accessory or something, and I feel like I'm wearing too many accessories. Also, why am I wearing glasses? That's annoying. Lilith and Sagittarius doesn't care, you know? No.
I'm surprised that you say that you don't know why you have the association of Lilith and Sagittarius with cowboy hats, because to me it's pretty obvious. It's like the centaur. It's horses.
Oh.
It's like, duh.
I didn't even
Cowboy.
think about that. It was more coming from, I think the United States Constitution has a Lilith and Sagittarius, and America loves cowboy hats.
America also has a Sagittarius rising, and they have Lilith in the first house. I don't know. And then obviously vacation shirt. Sagittarius is a sign that has to do with travel.
Come on.
And is laid back and relaxed. The thing with the detriment involved in Lilith and Sagittarius, and I feel like last video we didn't say this, and it was a bad video to not say this because we made some really bold claims with Lilith in the 8th house, as you do. Lilith is not like the biggest thing in your chart. It's a little baby node, and she's not destined to take over your life. She's not something that's going to be necessarily very prevalent in your chart unless you know, she is doing something pretty extra in your chart. And also, listen, we're not here to sugarcoat it. Like, she's a messy bitch. The messy bitch shit that Lilith in Sagittarius will create is based on this lack of impulse control, which obviously comes from this fear that they will be restricted, just like they were in their exile experience in their past. So a really simple example of that is too much accessories, too many accessories. But then again, this placement lends itself to addiction. It lends itself to, again, like, Sagittarius is about having fun to a certain extent, or just being free to do whatever you want, being flexible and all of these things. But Lilith isn't flexible. Lilith gets obsessed. Lilith gets attached. So unfortunately, with Lilith and Sagittarius, things that are meant to be fun and free, you end up getting too attached to, too trapped in, and a fun, cool glass of beer at the end of the night can very easily turn into an addiction. Sex can become an addiction. Anything that's like sort of fun and a way to express your freedom, especially, you know, as a teenager when freedom is like relatively illegal. It can turn into something that really creates a lot of problems in your life, because there's no barrier between like, I'm gonna be fun and free, but also I'm going to be responsible. With Sagittarius, it's not about being responsible, but if you go too deep into this energy of just being a little responsible, it turns into actually a huge burden in your life. Considering that, you know, Sagittarius squares Virgo, there can be a real difficulty creating any sorts of boundaries for yourself, including a routine. Something like, oh, I'm gonna go out and just have one drink. Like Lilith and Sagittarius is not just like, wow, you can do that? Man, I can't because I just have too much fun. It's also this thing of like, the thought of restricting oneself is so claustrophobic, is so scary, to the point of like having a bedtime, yikes. I don't know if I can do that. Having anything that is healthy and Virgo-esque is too claustrophobic to the Lilith and Sagittarius sometimes.
Obviously, we've been hammering the idea of Lilith and Sagittarius and personal freedom, but because it is Lilith, it's not just like that open-ended Sagittarius, like, we're all free and I'm free and you're free. No, I feel like with Lilith and Sagittarius, it's more like, I'm allowed to be free and I don't even care if that infringes on your personal freedoms. All that matters is that I get my freedom. And so even though I am absolutely not saying that, like, if you're a Lilith and Sagittarius, you're an anti-masker. In fact, the Lilith and Sagittariuses that I know aren't. But what I'm saying is the kind of idea of why people are that way and what's behind it kind of makes me think of Lilith and Sagittarius. Because it's like, how dare you restrict my personal freedom and make me wear a mask? And they don't care that it's then infringing on everybody else's freedom, especially those people that are sick and this and this and that and public safety. They don't care that it's infringing on those people's freedom to then go out and do things. What matters is that they're free to not wear a mask if they choose not to. I mean, like I said, the United States Declaration of Independence has a Lilith and Sagittarius. So it makes sense why so many Americans, especially more than a lot of other countries, are responding in this way.
Yeah, and again, like, just take the Declaration of Independence as an example. Let's use that as our first celebrity, if you will. Yes. The fear is, you know, going back to that state of being a colony. of being a set of colonies. Like the fear is being under someone else's thumb.
And I mean, it's literally called Declaration of Independence. I declare I have my complete freedom because I said so, you know?
Yes. And also, like, I mean, let's get, it's Sagittarius. Let's get a little bit more political too, if you will. You know, there's an underbelly of the Declaration of Independence where not all men or humans are created equal, have that freedom. So woven into the Declaration of Independence is not only that Lilith in Sagittarius like desire for freedom, but also the exile experience of Lilith in Sagittarius.
Yeah, I mean, even just what you said, like, it says all men are created equal, but it definitely didn't mean that. It meant we who are making it is created equal, you know?
Yeah. Do you know what the loophole they came up with that is? They decided that Black people only counted as 3/4 of a man. Isn't that fucked up?
Yeah. Which is, yeah, it feels very Lilith and Sagittarius in like the worst way. And we're not trying to say that if we're Lilith and Sagittarius, this is what you think by any means. So kind of going into that, obviously these people have very strong beliefs. The beliefs are going to vary depending on the person's chart, but whatever your beliefs are, because of that exile feeling, Lilith in Sagittarius is probably going to then double down. Like, oh, you guys don't like my beliefs? Oh, you know, I was against everyone. Like, to be able to stand up to that consistently throughout your life, you have to have very strongly held beliefs and have a lot of confidence in them. And Lilith in Sagittarius really does. And these are sometimes people that can be a little self-righteous, a little bit like, oh, I don't care what you have to say and I won't hear it because I know what I think. Even if what they're saying has all the right meaning behind it or even all the right intention, sometimes just the way that they go about saying it can be a little bit rude or a little harsher. For whatever reason, it can be a little bit off-putting to people because they do have such strongly held beliefs that it's hard for them not to talk about it in such a strong way. And sometimes the beliefs that they do have can really open doors for them, but sometimes the humility that they lack can close those doors as well.
Lilith in Sagittarius wants to be in control of world perspectives. I even just thought, like, this might be like a cult leader position.
I was just about to say, I wrote false prophet kind of vibe, you know?
Yeah. It's this idea of wanting to be in control of a philosophy. Mm-hmm. And again, there is so much passion in what they believe, and because they cling to it so deeply. It's like, it's interesting. It might not be driven from confidence. It might be a desperation to believe in what they believe in. I'm thinking of like L. Ron Hubbard had like a lot of fears that he was insane. And he sounded a little insane, but he was afraid that he might be insane. And he said things like, well, an insane man wouldn't question if they were insane because they would just be too insane. But it showed, like, even though he said that with such confidence, it showed this fear that he was a little cuckoo.
Yeah, kind of going more into that false prophet, cult leader, L. Ron Hubbard, all that stuff. Lilith is manipulative, as we know. And the way that Lilith in Sagittarius manipulates is they can really easily manipulate other people's beliefs. They can make people believe them. They can really influence their thoughts, all that kind of stuff that we've been talking about. But also with Sagittarius, because like Nina brought up, it squares Virgo. Lilith in Virgo has a lot of trouble with black and white thinking. Like, oh, I don't drink soda. And they will never drink soda. They will really say that and they will really do that. But with Lilith and Sagittarius, there might be more of a thing where preach, but because Sagittarius rules more of that gray area, in some ways this is helpful because in understanding that gray area, they understand more of the ebb and flow of life, but also kind of like that false prophet thing, they can preach something, but then behind the back be doing their own thing because because at the end of the day, they don't even want their beliefs to restrict their freedom. They're not letting anything restrict their freedom, even if it's what they say and what they preach. You know, what is that thing like, do as I say, not as I do. Now, they would never say that. A Sagittarius might say that and be like, yeah, do as I say, not as I do. We all make mistakes. A Lilith and Sagittarius would never be like, oh, I don't do this. You know, they're gonna keep it it's their secret, man. But, you know, behind closed doors, other things may be happening that are different from what they're preaching.
Or they can be manipulative in the way of like, oh, but there's this new rule that I've just invented for why I can drink soda. God, you're so stupid. You didn't understand the truth of all of these rules.
Right. And I do feel like that's the difference. Like a Sagittarius energy would be like, guys, I found this new thing. My opinions have changed. Let me tell you about it. But the Lilith and Sagittarius is instantly going to be like, you idiots. You didn't see this before? You know?
Yeah.
If you've been watching our Lilith videos, you know that Lilith kind of leans into sexuality. Yeah, it's not as literal as like Mars or things like that, but there is still a dose of it because it's that magnetism. Lilith and Sagittarius, I'm gonna say I just don't see as the most sexy sign, and they can have other things in their chart that make them attractive. But I feel like where Lilith and Sagittarius gets its magnetism is just like, oh, that person, they're doing them, and that's cool as fuck. You know, that might be the magnetism that you hold. But also I think that sometimes Lilith and Sagittarius, their sexuality, it can be a little bit funny because it is like that burst of energy, that burst of high. It's like, let's say they're like a Taurus rising. They're like chill, 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 chill. And then all of a sudden you strike their Lilith and Sagittarius and it's just like they can like pounce. Like Sagittarius sexuality is very uncontrolled and it can be a lot of stuff coming at you at once. So it's like once they've unleashed that, then there's no holding that back kind of thing.
I think that what would be attractive about a Lilith and Sagittarius to someone who is like being seduced by them is this sort of like, I can show you the world thing that they bring. It's like, listen, with me, it's no holds bar. With me, you'll try things that you've never tried before. But again, like, the thing with Sagittarius Lilith is that it takes things to excess, to a detriment. And especially if like your Lilith and Sagittarius is in some sort of social house, your inability to be consistent or even being having such a big sex drive that it's really demanding of your partner can, if it's in like a social house, can affect your social relationships, can affect your sexual relationships, can keep you from being able to be with someone consistently, whether that's because of sexuality and your sex drive, or whether it's because of your flakiness and ability to kind of like meet commitments with friends. That can be a difficulty, is that your freedom and your independence gets in the way of your life in that way.
Going off of that, these people, just like we said, they want their freedom. They also want their sexual freedom. You know, these people might be very attracted to no strings attached kind of sex, or they can even kind of be that person that's like, I'm allowed to go off and do what I want, but I don't feel comfortable with you doing that. They just might really also have such a past history, a past relationship history, a past sexual history. They've probably experienced a lot because they've probably jumped on every experience that they get without much thinking. So in some ways, it is a really interesting experience because these people have just been through a lot of fun relationship and sexual experiences. Also, I wrote down some examples of like the kind of sexy. I think part of the reason why I wear my glasses is because Lilith and Sagittarius, glasses, Sagittarius thinking, knowledge, all that stuff. And I think of Michelle Obama as a good example. You know, everybody always says she's pretty and she's beautiful. She's very teacher sexy to me. You know, like, I'm gonna get your kids outside and we're gonna play ball. I'm gonna be the fun and free first lady. You know, like that's kind of the image that she wanted to cultivate, and we all loved her when she was doing that. And then the other kind of sexy can be that really quirky, outlandish, over the top kind of sexy, which I think of as like Dolly Parton. Like even the fact that she has like these gigantic fake boobs and just like bigger is better. That might even be a little bit of an addiction. Like if I can get big boobs, might as well get the biggest, bitch. I mean, Nicki Minaj has this too, you know? I think that can be a way that it goes. They both dress in very outlandish things. Even Dolly Parton has that like cowboy Sagittarius thing that we've been referencing a lot. You know, doesn't she do like country music? Isn't that her thing?
Yes, she does country music. She's the definition of like, put an extra accessory on before you leave the house.
Yes. Yeah, like these people really want to seem relatable and fun. Like Sagittarius has a really good sense of humor, so Lilith and Sagittarius might have a very dark sense of humor. I think that these can be a really big, fun, confident energy to be around in the simplistic terms.
I think it's not even necessarily a dark sense of humor. I think that Sagittarius Lilith is just like controversial in the way that it expresses itself. It's like, that's the whole thing. It's like, it doesn't want to limit its way of expressing itself. So inevitably it will be controversial. And so that can mean darkness, that can mean like political commentary, saying things that are tone deaf even on purpose.
Yes. That is such a good word for Lilith and Sagittarius, is tone deaf for sure. And they don't give a fuck. They're like, I wanted to say it.
Yeah.
Who cares? These people can even possibly get away with a lot. Like, I think a very easy example is like if you have Lilith in the second house in Sagittarius, you can get away with stealing a lot of things. If you know Lilith in the second house, there's an entitlement to things. A lot of times that can lean into stealing things. And Lilith in Sagittarius is going to be so entitled to its freedom, entitled to like, I shouldn't have to be, you know, barred by paying money for this. And they might even just get away with it time and time again. Also, this is opposite Lilith and Gemini. Lilith and Gemini love small talk. That's all they just want to do is chit chat, chit chat, chit chat. And so I'm wondering if Lilith and Sagittarius almost like hate small talk, so much to the point that if they don't want to talk or engage in it, like just like they can do the opposite and say something tone deaf because they want to, they can also just be like, yeah, I should be part of this conversation right now and it would be the polite thing to do, but I don't really care what you guys are talking about and I don't really feel like talking, so therefore I'm not even gonna try to be a part of this. You know, it can go the other way too, I feel like.
Yeah, ultimately it's just down to not wanting to limit yourself. And small talk can be really limiting. You can feel like there's a wrong thing that you can say, you have to act in a certain way, and so that's what can put Lilith and Sagittarius off small talk. But interestingly, sometimes Lilith and Sagittarius gets frustrated by its own Lilithness naturally, and the inability for small talk, the feeling that you can't control yourself. All of these things can actually be really frustrating to the Lilith and Sagittarius, whether it's like, damn, I really can't control the way that I drink, or damn, I just cannot make myself sit down and be professional in an interview and talk the way that I need to do, dress the way that I need to do, and behave the way that I need to. So that's another thing, is that sometimes Lilith and Sagittarius is purposefully tone deaf, but sometimes that itch for freedom can really get in the way of your life. Also, I don't know, like, this is another thing that I don't know where to slip into, because we've already like talked about America and whatnot, but how Lilith and Sagittarius is it of America, despite America being a Sagittarius rising, to be like the only country that doesn't have really a second language?
Yes.
Come on.
It's even like when somebody comes here, it's like, how dare you not know English? But when you go there, you're like, how dare you not know English? And it's like, bro, that doesn't make any sense. Lilith is nonsensical, you know?
Yes. And America also gets some shit for like not having culture. It's like, think of the food that you eat in America. It's like, what do you want tonight? Do you want Chinese food? Do you want Italian food?
But it's American Italian. Food? American Chinese.
Yes.
You know? I've kind of already mentioned Nicki Minaj, but I think she's a great example because she's somebody who, it's conjuncture Venus. So whenever Lilith is touching something else or along those lines, it'll be more obvious. Always been very confident and showy about her sexuality. Also, she has a Sagittarius stellium, and that falls in the first house of the Declaration of Independence, and there's all those memes and all those TikToks about Barb Nation and like her face being on the American flag. Like, I have been seeing that nonstop. Like, you know, if you are a fan of Nicki Minaj, you fucking pledge allegiance to that flag. And not only, since we've been Sagittarius, so we've been talking so much about America, because America. But Christopher Columbus, has Lilith and Sagittarius in the 5th house. And he has extreme entitlement over land, over people, over his freedom, and over winning that land. And
he's like the mascot of just being tone deaf. He's like, this isn't India, I'm gonna call you Indian.
Yes, that's so funny. And everyone was like, no, that's not right. And he was like, well, these are still Indians to me.
So much that it's like, it's remained in our vernacular.
Yeah.
Fucking 600 years from now.
Since we're going non-stop politics, Boris Johnson has this in the 2nd house and Donald Trump has this in the 4th house. And if you know anything about the two of them, they're often compared to each other a lot because they have that same kind of like crazy hair, kind of confused thing, but also their beliefs are so much less fueled by their actual views on politics and just based upon how can my beliefs and my views benefit me the most, you know, is kind of both of their ideas.
Donald Trump also has a Sagittarius moon. What house did you say Boris Johnson?
Yeah, so
was in?
Boris has it in his 2nd house and Donald Trump has it in his 4th house. So I feel like Boris Johnson is obviously more aware and more strategic about what he's doing because he doesn't have as much Sagittarius stuff. Whereas Donald Trump, it has his moon in it. It's in his 4th house. That's legitimately who he is.
What I know about Boris Johnson is that he is crazy, but also he he did this initiative like around this time last year where he paid if people would eat out. Because restaurants were closing down, so he would pay half of everyone's meal. Like the government would pay half of everyone's meal to keep businesses afloat, to help the economy. And that's like very 2nd house, right? It's like for the sake of freedom, for going out during a pandemic, I will pay for freedom. I will literally pay money for freedom.
Yeah, no, that is so literal. That's so funny. Elton John has this in his 1st house. Come on, he's got the big costumes. He's got the whole grand thing going on. I mean, even coming out as gay is a huge deal and I think has a lot to do with his Lilith and Sagittarius being in the 1st house. I'm going to be who I am and I'm going to live as authentically as I can, you know, it can be a positive thing.
And he's an addict, so.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Britney Spears has this in the 3rd house. But I mean, she came from a small town. You know, she probably felt really restricted by that, needed her freedom, and she finally gets famous. And then what happens? She has a conservator completely restricting that freedom, restricting where she's even allowed to go within the community, you know, 3rd house.
Yeah, and it's all through the guise of like Britney can't control herself.
Oh yeah.
But as soon as she gets this freedom, she gets out of small town Louisiana. And I mean, she has her son in the 3rd house in Sagittarius as well. So there is some indication that this is like a part of herself that she enjoys. And then as soon as she gets like any little bit of freedom with like, again, alcohol, drugs, hitting paparazzis with umbrellas, it's like you gotta shut that Sagittarius Lilith down immediately.
Yeah, I always thought it was crazy that she got so much shit for, like, it was that crazy of a thing to like shave her head. I was like, that's not that crazy. Like, bitches do it all the time. Like, what are we doing but fucking taking scissors to our hair? You know what I mean? Like, I think it was a very normal experience, especially with what she was under, but people really exaggerated it and really, really heightened it and really made it a way bigger, more isolating and exiling experience for her than it should have been.
I feel like we've been bringing up a lot in this video of like, oh, you have this formative experience of being restricted and then you fight against it. And I don't think that we've articulated well enough throughout this video that the restriction can continue to happen in your adult life. It's just like you want to fight against that restriction, but it still might happen to you.
On a little bit of a quicker note, Andre the Giant, he has nothing else in Sagittarius, but he's a Lilith in Sagittarius, and I'm bringing it up because his name is the Giant, because he's a huge, tall person. He's 7 foot tall. I'm sure he was made to feel exiled and uncomfortable and weird because of that.
And also, unfortunately, his giantness, his giant status, if you will, was the result of like a medical problem. He died as a result of this medical thing that made him giant. So it's a really practical application of Lilith will do Lilith until it becomes your detriment. Being giant is what became the detriment to his life. In case you're like new to astrology, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So big things, and that's even America, like expanding, like taking other people's land and just like making it such a big country.
Natasha Bedingfield is a double Sag, and she also has this, I don't know much about her, but her two main songs are very Sagittarius. We've got Pocket Full of Sunshine, and even in it she says, do what you want, but you're never gonna break me. Sticks and stones are never gonna shake me. Because she's an independent Sagittarius. And also even Unwritten. I am unwritten, can't read my mind, I'm undefined. Like, I'm gonna feel and think how I want, and you know, you won't know I'm mutable.
And today is when it begins. The rest is still unwritten. You have the freedom to write the rest of your story.
Yes, yes. There was a few pop singers actually that had Lilith and Sagittarius, which makes sense. Because a lot of it is the theme of like, I am free. Oh my God. Somebody who I have recently become a fan of, hopefully you have too, is Wendy Williams. Now she's crazy. She's got Gemini somewhere, and she's got a Scorpio moon, and she has this Lilith and Sagittarius in the 10th house. And if you've seen any of the shit that she says, it is the definition of tone deaf in the best way. Well, that's just my bias. If you saw that thing where she was like,
how dare you, Mr. Spears? You had me fooled. And you too, Mrs. Spears. Death to all of them.
She said that on television, and everyone in the audience was like, because she wants to see how far she can push it. There's another clip. I honestly might just insert it because it's so perfect. I mean, this is in her 10th house, so we are seeing this just displayed perfectly in front of us, truly.
I have no idea who this is. Neither does Norman. Neither does one person in this building. Maybe Sus does. Do you know who Swavey is? Clap. Clap if you know who Swavey is. Okay. Well, he's a TikTok star. He's got more followers than me. 2.5 million. So here he is. He's 19, and he was murdered Monday morning.
And everyone was like, oh no. She says crazy shit. And I just feel like it is so Lilith and Sagittarius. But like I said, she also has Gemini energy. She also has Scorpio energy. So that's why she's even gonna go really, really far, you know?
I'm fairly sure she's a cokehead as well.
She also has obviously had a lot of plastic surgery too. The other person who displays this pretty extremely, because he has this in the 9th house as well as being in Sagittarius, is Che Guevara. And he is an Argentine Marxist, military warfare theorist, revolutionary, all that kind of Lilith and Sagittarius 9th house stuff. And I feel like even the fact that it is very polarizing how people view him. Some people view them as this great political figure who helped reach freedom and was a fighter for freedom, and other people saw him as the exact opposite, trying to limit people's freedom. And it just depends on the point of view. It depends on the perspective. And he experienced a lot of exile for his extreme views, and he is not going to back down from them. He's also an Aries rising, so that's why it also has a lot to do with that fire energy of being very militant and aggressive and violent.
I know that Che Guevara, people would literally compare him to Jesus. Like, people really put him on this pedestal.
Yeah. He grew up seeing a lot of poverty and seeing a lot of freedoms being restricted. Because he witnessed that Lilith exile from these natural freedoms, he went the other way and wanted to make sure people got that. But also because it's Lilith, you're going to go to extremes. Also, I thought it was interesting because he has a Taurus sun in the 2nd house, and I feel like this paired with it, he wanted to create a new man again with a man thing, I guess it's a Lilith and Sagittarius thing, again, but it's driven by morals rather than materials, which is that Taurus in the second house, like rather than materials, we want to be driven by morals, the Sagittarius thing. Okay, so I touched on Tyler the Creator because I think his style is a great example of a lot of Lilith and Sagittarius stuff that I see, but also the fact that, oh my god, like when Odd Future was popular, that's all my fucking high school cared about, and everybody had an upside down cross on everything. And I feel like that is so Lilith and Sagittarius, because I talked about how they're indentured into a religion and they say fuck you and they go against it. Even the Odd Future Wolfgang, kill them all, like I feel like can be very Lilith and Sagittarius, very much that rebellious Lilith and Sagittarius nature. Also, he says shit all the time. He's always saying shit, he's always running around. He's also a Leo rising, so there's an entitlement there for sure that comes with both of these energies. And the last person I'll bring up is Stephen Colbert. The Colbert Report is, I think, a good example of Lilith and Sagittarius. He kind of had that Republican character, and it was very satirical. And I mean, everything that he talks about is politics. Everything that makes fun of is politics. I mean, he's on one of the late shows. They all name basically the same thing, whatever late show he's on. And what did he talk about nonstop? Another Lilith and Sagittarius, Donald Trump. That was what he talked about the whole presidency. One Lilith and Sagittarius making fun of another Lilith and Sagittarius because they both think they're right, you know?
And of course, if he's not talking about Donald Trump, he's talking about America, which is another Lilith and Sagittarius.
So yeah, that is our Lilith and Sagittarius video. Up next is Lilith in the 9th house.
Remember to check out everything in the down bar. We've got readings from Shaina. We've got readings from Nina. We've got a whole bunch of Lilith videos in our Lilith series playlist. Check that out as well.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.